his cousin and the doctor. And it turns out that the guy in the house is, of course, the missing reporter from the Miami Herald. And then we switch to Sheriff Buck and the school marm, as Sheriff Buck is found out that Caleb and the doctor and Gail have found this man, is driving with the school marm, talking to her about how this is going to be bad. He's a reporter. He reports. It's what he does. He's going to talk. And she turns to him and says he's not going to talk. And Lucas turns to her and says,
do you want me to say it?
You want to say it?
I don't. It's horrible, but you go ahead. This is all you.
Lucas says, well, what did you do? Bite his tongue out in a fit of passion? And the school marm just kind of gets an embarrassed look on her face and looks down. And it's the one time in the series where you see Lucas Buck is genuinely disturbed. And he's the fucking devil.
Right. Interesting. So, having only seen this episode, I'm just looking at him as somebody who's just completely awful, evil. So it's interesting that was a moment that really struck a chord with you, because I don't think it hit me in that same way because I didn't have the depth of how evil he is yet. But now that you say that, and I'm understanding more of the context of the circumstances of everything and the circumstances of the child and all that, it's like, wow, that really was even more powerful than I realized in that moment.
Yeah. So they all end up back at the abandoned home. The one thing that the reporter wants, he's written Saul on the ground, and Caleb thinks his name is Saul, but in actuality, he's writing son in Spanish, and he just wants to see the sun. So Caleb climbs up and, rips out some planks in the roof of the house, and the light shines in on him, and the guy, seems like he's at peace, and then he shuffles off this mortal coil. And then Lucas and Selena show up. And of course, Lucas grabs the guy's bag as evidence because all of the guys reporting on what's going on in Trinity, including being kidnapped. And
the best was seeing him pull out the floppy disks and the. It's like, oh yeah, there it is.
So and then the episode ends where, now that Gail, who is Caleb's cousin, is in town, she has custody of Caleb. Lucas doesn't have any right to try and take the kid because he's been, trying, his machinations up to this point have been to get Caleb into his custody because he believes Caleb is his son and wants to raise him in his image. And that's the end of the second episode of American Gothic. A tree grows in Trinity. So if you
my gosh, you know what? It's funny because now you said it, the title of the episode, and obviously I saw it when you sent it to me. But now, based on the end moment in the graveyard, the little cemetery tree, now it all kind of makes sense, and the rebirth of it. Oh wow!
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Let's recap something else so I can understand it better.
Yeah. I'm sorry if I threw a curveball at you like this, but I've wanted to get to an episode of American Gothic since I started the podcast, and I thought that you would be the perfect person I figured you're either a fan of it, and if you weren't, I'm like, Kasey's gonna dig this. It's got to be right up her alley.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you introduced me to it. It's. I just had no idea. And Sam Raimi, of course,
Sam Raimi is one of the producers on it. And like every episode, there'll be heavies and stuff and character actors from different episodes, and you could tell that this show used the same casting director as X-Files.
Right. Even the deputy who's Nick Cersei, I believe.
Yes.
I couldn't. I don't think I've seen him in anything before Justified. until this. So that was also kind of interesting to see, like, oh, this is one of his early roles,
Oh,
and he's
what?
a fantastic actor.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was him, because he's so much more austere in Justified. But I'm taking a quick look. So Sean Cassidy wrote the episode. It was directed by Michael Katelman. And I just wanted to see who else. Anybody jumping out at me, but but Sam Raimi, executive producer of it. And as I said, Sean Cassidy. Yeah, and then you know what Sean Cassidy did right after this, the very next show?
Please tell me.
He created Howl.
Really?
Which was the show about Celtic warriors that Heath Ledger was in.
Yeah, that's so wow. Yeah. He's been busy. Well, didn't he do like a bunch of Matlock too? I mean,
Matlock. Probably. I mean, all right. Well, let me look up his.
I think that's like the first time that I was having any understanding of who he was, and then like Cold Case Files or I can't remember, but.
He's been producing Blue Bloods, Emerald City. He was producing in 2017. Then he did a show called New Amsterdam, which is still on. So he's been producing stuff.
Good on him.
Yeah,
I'm so behind on TV because there's just so much good programming, and there's so many different outlets, and there's so much coming at you that it's just it's hard to keep up with what's going on. Nonetheless, go back and revisit a bunch of shows that are from the 90s, so it's one thing I will say during pandemic time is we've all got to catch up on our television consumption.
Like the thing about it, Kasey, is I honestly gotta say, I mean, if this had been, if the previous administration had dealt with things differently, and if people had just, we would still have to be what we're doing now, but we wouldn't have 500,000 dead people. If people had just, it's obvious we didn't need to, not go out, outside and go to the park. But if everybody had just not had more than 10 people over their house for 6 months, it would have made a huge difference, but people couldn't be bothered.
Well, don't even get me started on all that. LA, we started here as like a model state, and then we turned into a nightmare. So, and then of course I'm from Texas, and I think we're seeing how that's playing out.
Yeah.
So, it's exciting. It's these days we just all got to keep doing what we can and try to do what we're supposed to do, and try to stay healthy, and try to stay safe and keep those around us the same. So we're doing what we can, and I wish that we could have had a different administration taking care of things, but thank goodness even during the global pandemic, people let their voices be heard.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people, a lot of people kind of needed a break from the American dream for a fucking year. Because it's like this whole, the insanity of it, that, was shown that we can turn everything off and then come back to it in 6 months, and the world will be just the same, but billionaires don't want it, they don't want that to happen, because then they can't buy another boat that they can park their smaller boat inside.
Everybody needs a big boat for their little boat, Pat.
Yes,
come on.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss what's on your shelf, which is a Q&A with our guests about the content that they are currently enjoying at home. All right, This is Pat Kennedy. We are the Literate Nerds, and we'll be back right after the jump. Nerds. Okay, and welcome back to the Literate Nerds. Our next and final segment is What's on Your Shelf, which is a Q&A with our guests about the content that they are currently enjoying at home. I am going to tell you what I am currently enjoying at home first, just to get it out of the way. And I'm reading Of Mice and Minestrone by none other than you and your pa, Joe R. Lansdale. It's a collection of short stories of Hap and Leonard, who, if people don't know who Hap and Leonard are, there's plenty of books. There's 3 seasons of a television series with the brilliant James Purfoy and Michael K. Williams in the title role. And this is a collection of short stories, Hap and Leonard, the early years. So it takes place right around when I graduated high school, like, 88, 89, 90. Hap and Leonard are wonderful characters. They're 2 of the most dynamic characters in mystery fiction and have been for the last 30 years. But the thing I love about the book also is that there's a whole bunch of recipes in the back that are supposed to be from Hap's family. And Hap is a very thinly disguised version of your dad, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
And Leonard's family. And all right, I'm going to say this right up front. One of the things I love, because it drives me nuts about cookbooks, each recipe, the ingredients are right up front before you get into the meat of telling the story of, because it's great. It's written in Hap's voice. Hap's telling about how his Mima and so on and so forth, made these various recipes, or Leonard's family. But, having the ingredients at the top of a recipe makes such a difference for me as a chef, because I can look at it, I know exactly what I need, and then I can look at the techniques of the recipe as I go along. And I just really love that. And you, Kasey, you did a bang up job on them. I had dinner this evening with my friend Andy Lisnoff, who is a professional chef who works for Cuisine Solutions, which is the world's largest purveyor of sous vide prepared food in the world. And they've trained 80% of the 3-star Michelin chefs in the world on sous vide food preparation.
Wow.
Yeah. Andy's Andy's sister, Liz,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
brother-in-law Brian.
Of course, I adore them.
Yeah, so Andy's he's one of those guys who threw himself full forward into culinary, and he's not classically trained. He never went to culinary school. It's all self-taught, and then he just got so good, and then he just kept working up, and he's brilliant. But anyway, we were talking about the recipes, and he was like, "Yeah, man, these are spot on." He's like, "Oh yeah," he's like, "Oh, bacon fat, yep, like seeing that. Oh, that's great." So we were talking about it. So folks, definitely you could find her on Amazon. It's available on Kindle. The title is Of Mice and Minestrone, and it's outstanding. Can't recommend it enough.
Well, thank you. That was a conscious decision, because nothing I hate more than, you find a recipe on a website and you have to, first of all, read the person's life story, which I'm sure it's wonderful, but I came for the recipe. So let's move along. And then you go through and you're cooking everything or baking, whatever it is. And then halfway through, then they give you a note on something that you've already done. Oh, and don't forget. And it's like, well, shit, I've already put that in there. I wish I'd have known it was supposed to be room temperature or cold or whatever it is. They don't really give you much prep time. So one of the things I really wanted to be conscious of was having it all up front. And I don't have the book in front of me right this moment because we just moved, so everything's in a box. But one of the things that I remember doing was saying, I think it was pie crust, that when I say cold water, I mean cold water. Not, don't just pull out water and have it ready. I mean, put some ice in it, make it chilly. Yeah. And those are the things that I didn't want people to have already put the water in the recipe and then go, oh, I didn't realize it was supposed to be cold because she didn't tell us till later. Yeah. So it seems like a small thing, but since you're a chef, you understand. No, and listen, I don't claim to be a cook or a chef. You're the guy.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, you have a love of food. We God knows we've broken bread many times in our life. And As I said, we've broken bread many times in our life, and your parents have a great appreciation of food, and I think your brother does as well. And